Every Sunday, millions of Christians open Proverbs for 5 minutes of devotional comfort. They find a verse, feel encouraged, close the book, and move on with their day. And that's the problem. Because Proverbs is not a devotional, it is a curriculum written by the wisest, wealthiest man who ever lived, tested across a lifetime of real-world experience, and packed with financial laws so specific, so precise, so actionable, that if you built your entire economic life around them, you would not recognize yourself in 5 years. But nobody preaches these. Not the ones that actually cost you something. Not the ones that require you to change how you think, how you spend, how you negotiate, how you plan, how you build. Church takes the comfortable verses and leaves the confrontational ones sitting on the page. 7 laws, right there in Proverbs, hidden in plain sight. Most believers have read past them their entire lives without stopping to understand what God was actually saying about their money. Tonight, that changes. Law 1. Know the face of your money. Proverbs 27:23 says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds." Solomon wasn't just talking to farmers. He was describing a universal economic principle using the language of his era. And the Hebrew text doesn't say, "Know about your flocks." The word is pain, face. Get close enough to know them individually, specifically, every single one. Then he tells you exactly why in verse 24. For riches do not endure forever. He doesn't say riches might not endure. He says they do not endure. Present tense, permanent statement. Wealth has a natural tendency to disappear on its own, without help, without an enemy. The only defense is daily intimate awareness of where your money is and where it's going. Here's what this looks like today. Most people have a general feeling about their finances. They assume things are roughly fine until a bill hits that shouldn't, or the account comes up short in a way they can't explain. They're not looking at the face of their money. They're glancing at it from across the room and hoping it's still there. God said, get close. Know the exact state of every account. Know where every dollar went last month. Not approximately, exactly. Proverbs 24:30-34 shows you what happens to the field you stop watching. Solomon walked past a man's land. Nobody attacked it. Nobody robbed it. It just fell apart. Weeds everywhere. Walls collapsed. Not because of an enemy, because nobody was watching. You cannot manage what you do not monitor. And what you don't manage, you will lose. That is not a warning. That is a law. Law 2:2. Building is active. Destruction is passive. Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. Read it carefully. The wise woman builds. Active, intentional, consistent. Directed effort toward a destination. The foolish woman tears hers down. Also active verb. But here's what almost nobody catches. She is not doing it on purpose. She is doing it with her own hands, which means the destruction is self-inflicted but not intentional. It is the result of daily decisions made without a destination in mind. This is one of the most accurate descriptions of how most people handle money. Nobody wakes up and says, I will destroy my financial future today. But millions of people make small, daily, unexamined decisions that tear down whatever they are trying to build. The impulse purchase, the subscription never canceled, the raise absorbed into lifestyle without a plan, the extra income that came in and quietly disappeared, Building requires a blueprint. Building requires showing up even when the progress is invisible. Destruction requires nothing. It just requires stopping. And here is the law underneath this verse. Your financial life is always moving in one of two directions. If you are not actively, intentionally building, you are passively tearing down. There is no neutral. There is no maintenance mode. Inaction is not a pause. It is a slow demolition. Law 3, giving is not charity. It is a financial mechanism. Proverbs 11:2-4. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. This is one of the most counterintuitive statements in all of Scripture, and one of the most ignored, because it does not make mathematical sense. If I give, I have less. That is how subtraction works. But God says that is not how generosity works. He says one person gives freely, not carefully, not reluctantly, not from the leftovers, freely, and gains even more. The Hebrew word for gains means to gather, to accumulate. The act of giving initiates a process of accumulation. Then the contrast. Another withholds unduly. That word unduly is doing heavy lifting. This is not someone who refuses reckless giving. This is someone who holds back what should flow. Someone who grips so tightly that nothing moves in either direction. And the result, poverty. Proverbs 28:2-7 confirms it. He who gives to the poor will not lack, but he who hides his eyes will have many curses. The person who hides their eyes, that's not someone who doesn't give. That's someone fully aware of the need who deliberately looks away. And God says that choice carries curses. Understand this clearly. God did not design generosity as an optional spiritual discipline. He wired it into the structure of how increase works. This law asks you to release before you see the return. That requires trust. But Proverbs does not frame it as faith and hope. It frames it as law. Give freely, gain more. Withhold, come to poverty. It is as reliable as gravity. Law 4. Act in the open window, or lose it. Proverbs 10:5. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Notice what God calls the person who sleeps during harvest. Not unlucky, not late, disgraceful. Why? Because he had access to the exact same window as the prudent son. Same field, same harvest, same opportunity, and he slept through it. This law is about windows, financial windows, career windows, business windows. Every opportunity has a window, and windows close. The job market has windows. Real estate cycles have windows. A specific skill has a window of maximum value before the market moves. A relationship with a mentor has a window. Your own physical energy and capacity has a window. And you cannot go back and harvest a season that is already past. Ecclesiastes 11:4 builds on this. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. You are waiting for conditions that will never be perfect. The economy will always feel uncertain. The timing will never feel right. The risk will never fully disappear. The prudent son doesn't harvest because conditions are ideal. He harvests because it's summer, because the window is open, because he knows what closed windows mean. What window is open in your life right now that you have been sleeping through? What opportunity is sitting in front of you that you have been preparing to take for so long that the summer is starting to turn? Law 5. Negotiation is a biblical skill. Proverbs 20:14. It's no good, says the buyer, then goes off and boasts about the purchase. I have never once heard this verse preached, not once, and it might be one of the most practically useful statements in the entire book. God is describing a specific transaction. The buyer publicly devalues the item, says it's not worth the asking price, negotiates down, gets a deal, and then walks away bragging. Solomon isn't condemning this behavior. He's describing it as a recognized reality of commerce. And the fact that it's in Scripture means God is not embarrassed by how buying and selling actually work. The law underneath this verse is simple. Price is a conversation, not a verdict. Whether you are buying a car, a property, a service, or negotiating your own salary, the first number presented is a starting position, not a fixed reality. Most Christians have been so conditioned to be agreeable, so conditioned to treat pushback as conflict, that they accept whatever they are told. They pay whatever price is named. They take whatever offer is extended, and they stay broke doing it. The person who negotiates a $5,000 reduction on a car just kept $5,000. The person who negotiated a 3 raise per hour over 2,000 working hours just earned 6,000 extra this year. The numbers are real. The skill is biblical. And it has been sitting in Proverbs 21:4, waiting for you to read it as permission. Law 6. There are 3 materials wealth requires. Most people only use one. Proverbs 24:3-4. By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. 3 distinct words. 3 distinct functions. Wisdom builds the house. That is the framework, the foundational decisions. Choosing the right path, starting on the right principles, laying the structure that will hold what comes next. That is wisdom. Understanding establishes the house. The Hebrew word means to make firm, to stabilize. Understanding is what keeps you from making emotional financial decisions. It is the difference between someone who earns well and stays broke and someone who earns modestly and builds something that lasts. It is the stabilizing force that determines whether what wisdom built will stand. Knowledge fills the rooms, the rare and beautiful treasures. That is the details. Knowing how compound interest works, how taxes function, how to read a contract, how to price your service correctly, how to understand the numbers in a business. Knowledge fills what wisdom built and understanding stabilized. Here is what most people do. They gain knowledge and call it wisdom. They consume information and wonder why nothing is being built. They have listened to the podcasts, read the books, watched every video, and they are still stuck because knowledge alone does not build a house. It fills one, and it can only fill one that already exists. You need all 3 in order. Wisdom to build, understanding to stabilize, knowledge to fill. Check which one you are missing. That is where your house is leaking. Your ceiling is your children's floor. Proverbs 13:22. A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, not their children, their children's children, 2 generations forward. Solomon is describing a person whose financial decisions today are made with a 30 to 40 year time horizon in mind. Be honest. Most of us don't budget consistently from month to month. The idea of thinking 2 generations ahead feels like something for people at a different income level. But that is exactly the poverty mindset this verse was written to disrupt. The law is not about how much you have. It is about what you are building toward. A person who earns modestly but builds with a generational vision will outperform a high earner who consumes everything they make, every time, without exception. Because intention changes behavior. The moment your financial goal is no longer just your comfort, it becomes something bigger than your next desire. It can survive the impulse purchase, the lifestyle inflation, the pressure to look blessed before you actually are. It becomes a mission. And here is the weight of the second half of that verse. But a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. God is saying that wealth being mismanaged, consumed without legacy, spent without vision, is not lost. It is in transit. It is waiting to be transferred. To the person who monitors the face of their flock, who builds with intention instead of tearing down passively, who gives freely, who acts in the open window, who negotiates, who builds with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, who thinks 2 generations ahead. The wealth is not missing, it is waiting, and it is waiting for the one who follows these laws. Close. Let me say this directly. These 7 laws are not hidden. They were never hidden. They are sitting in a book that more than 2 billion people own, carried to church every Sunday, read in devotionals every morning, and then set down without ever being treated as what they actually are. Instructions, laws, a financial manual written by the richest man in recorded history under the inspiration of God Himself. Proverbs 1-2-3 tells you exactly what the book was written for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior. Prudent behavior, that is financial language. That is economic instruction. That is God saying, I wrote this so you would know how to handle what I give you. The blueprint was never the problem. The gap between knowing and doing has always been the problem. Start with Law 1, tonight. Before you close this and scroll away, open your banking app. Look at last month. Every transaction. Know the face of your flock. One step. That is where all 6 others begin. If this opened your eyes to something you've been reading past your whole life, like this video right now, so more believers can find it. Share it with someone who has been sitting in church their whole life and still doesn't understand why the blessing hasn't landed. And subscribe to Bible Blade, because we are not here for comfortable Christianity. We are here to hand you the truth that actually changes your life and the tools to walk in it. The laws were never hidden. You just hadn't stopped long enough to read them as what they are. Start now.